Hi, everybody. I'm doing a book review today, A City on Mars. And the reason I'm reviewing this book is because I recently wrote a story about data centers in space and did a lot of research about what's happening for that. That's going to be going up shortly. And it reminded me of the most interesting book I've read in the last couple of years, which is this one. And there's a lot of information in here about where the best opportunities are for space exploration and I'm going to share my takeaways from this book. So the basic idea of the book is that Mars is a really, really hard place to live on. The gravity is really low. And so and for my personal takeaway is that all the problems that the authors talked about in regards to Mars are not problems in spinning space habitats, which is my favorite kind of space habitat, any kind of space settlement. I love the idea of space habitats, like a spinning hotel in space, right? So, for example, Mars has very low gravity, which is bad for humans unless we get some significant genetic editing or something to adapt to low gravity. And um, like, who wants that, right? Because you're going to have a hard time coming back. So, low gravity is a huge issue. You can't really spin a city on Mars to simulate gravity because you're like on the ground. I mean, you can still set up a tilt-a-whirl or something, but or everybody can wear heavy weights. Huge logistical issues, right? In a space station, you just spin it up. Another issue is that Mars doesn't have an atmosphere, so there's radiation coming through. There's no air to breathe. You always have to go out in a suit. There's uh, there's storms, winds, dust, all that other stuff getting in the way. You probably want to live underground, and so you're living underground in tunnels. Not much fun. I mean, yes, you can have full spectrum bulbs everywhere. I love my full spectrum lights. I have them on all the time for my seasonal affective disorder. Um, Lifesaver, highly recommend. But I don't think most people will enjoy that. I mean, yeah, you can have screens everywhere to make it look like you're outside, kind of like a Las Vegas casino, a little river running through the middle of it, like two-story buildings on the sides of big concourses. I mean, you can do stuff to dress it up, but I don't think a lot of people would like living inside basically a large underground shopping mall. No matter how much garden space you put in the center, it would still be a little weird. Um, Now you could do it, but it'd be very weird and expensive. Then Mars does have some gravity, so getting stuff down to Mars is difficult, and getting stuff up out of Mars is even more difficult, or equally difficult. It's hard because of the whole gravity thing. And so the authors say that the closest equivalent we have on Earth is Antarctica, or maybe the bottom of the ocean. And so with Antarctica, we have an international treaty about not exploiting it for resources and using it for research. A lot of international cooperation going on. No permanent settlements, even though there's no issue with gravity on Antarctica. There's no issue with having weird mutated babies if you decide to have children in Antarctica. I mean, you might like worry about medical care because you're so far away from like a real medical institution. But I guess you could have kids there if you wanted to. But people generally don't. And but it's pretty much limited to researchers there for short stints. And in Antarctica, you can go outside and breathe. Maybe, you want to be bundled up because it's really, really cold. But like people go out skiing and walking to other buildings and other stuff like that. Can't do that on Mars without like gearing up all the way into a spacesuit. So we don't even have permanent colonization with families in Antarctica. So it makes like no sense to do it on Mars, except as a research project, which is I totally support. I'm a big fan of using asteroids for mineral extraction as opposed to planets because, if you're up in the asteroid belt, you don't have much gravity to worry about. And you can just like shoot stuff off in the direction you want it to go, and it'll just sail on forever without stopping until something catches it. So, really economical transport. So yeah, and you can have the space habitats right up there. So it's a shorter haul. So I really like that idea. And the trip is a little farther than to Mars. But if we're going to Mars anyway, might as well go out to the asteroid belt. And it's a nicer destination once we get there if we have a spinning habitat, right? Another thing that we're going to do is AI-powered robotics and remote like gear and stuff. So we don't have to go down to the surface of these things at all. So we're already having a lot of industrial robots working in mines and factories and everything else. So if we do any kind of mineral extraction in a difficult place, like an asteroid or even Mars, then it makes sense to do it with robotics and have teleoperators someplace safe and nice, like a space station above it, spinning in a nice, like, Earth gravity. So I'm a big fan of space habitats. I mentioned that already. Yeah, the book also talks about the legal issues, like the treaties behind Antarctica, the current treaties about space exploration, which I thought was really, really cool. I didn't know about any of it. Highly recommend for reading about like all of that. Um, People also in science fiction books, they talk about colonies. And the weird thing, the thing that this gets me every single time, is that when people go to planets and start colonizing them, for some reason they revert to medieval levels of technology. Like, why? Why would you do this? I mean, it, we don't do it on Earth. Why would we do it in space? Right? I mean, that makes like zero sense. If you go to space, you want to bring your latest technology with you, not your oldest technology. Also, latest technology is cheaper than old technology. An old tractor is more expensive and heavier than a modern new AI powered one, right? So, like, literally makes zero sense. None of it makes zero sense. None of it makes any sense. Um, yeah, there's that. Second, terraforming Mars would be a huge undertaking, like hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of years, depending on which of the various options we take on it. Um, it is going to be really, really hard. And it's always going to have lower gravity than Earth because we can't like change the size of the planet. Well, yet, I guess. Um, we have already a planet that is pretty much perfect. It just needs a little bit of cleanup in the oceans and, a little bit of like reduction of oil and coal use and a little bit more use of renewable power. And it would be absolutely perfect. And the level of work needed to be done on Earth is insignificant compared to the amount of work we need to do on Mars to make it livable. Mars is not a backup plan for humanity. If an asteroid hits us and wipes us out, Mars is nowhere ready for colonization and won't be for centuries at the earliest. A space habitat can be ready, I mean, possibly within our lifetimes, especially if like AI like cures cancer and stuff. We might actually be living long enough to see it. The first industrial revolution doubled our lifespans. So it's not inconceivable. So you can have a space habitat spinning. You can have the hydroponics and the plants and everything, in there, unlimited solar power. We have everything we need. We know how to build greenhouses and grow plants. We know how to build like meat in cell cultures that taste like meat. We can do this We can do this already. We can do this in a space habitat, and we can build as many space habitats as we want once we industrialize mineral extraction from the moon or the asteroid belt, and get some robots up there to do the manufacturing. We can do this in our lifetimes, and that would be very, very cool. So yeah, and probably at first there'll be corporate run things, maybe some few government run things, some nonprofit run things, and eventually there'll be some kind of loose conglomeration of states. That's the other thing that really, really bothers me about science fiction books. When they predict the future, they go back to the past as inspiration for the history. And yeah, the past does repeat itself, but it never repeats itself exactly, right? Um, there's a reason people say that generals are always fighting the last war, because the next war is going to be different from the last war. So we're not going to have the same wars as we had, like this revolution war, the American Revolution. We're hopefully not going to have the same wars over slavery. Hopefully, we're not going to have a redo of the Roman Empire. Like, why would we? Why would we regress that much in our political structure when, in general, the evolution of human history over the past several centuries, has been towards a more progressive direction, better human rights, less fighting between countries? Doesn't feel that way because the news is always negative, but we're living in a really, really peaceful era by historical standards. It does not feel that way. There's a book called Factfulness. It's probably on my shelf somewhere, but I'm not going to find it right now. Fantastic read, highly recommend. And there's a book called Better Angels of Our Nature. Also love, also highly recommend, that tracks the decline in violence throughout human history. So we are living in an age that is less violent than we've ever had. So when we project to the future, science fiction writers think of evolution of democracy, not regression to the past, unless you're writing dystopian warnings, like this is what happens when we go bad. If you're writing optimistic science fiction or just average science fiction, like think ahead instead of looking back. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. Space habitats. Yeah, that's the ticket. Anyway, pick up a copy of this book if you're into this kind of thing. Highly, highly recommend. And I'll post all the links down below. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.